A while back, when Tears of the Kingdom was released, my brother and I had a very stupid conversation about whether or not a Link could survive in Resident Evil 4, and we came to the conclusion that Link would probably thrive in that scenario because he'd just register Ashley as another incarnation of Zelda, which raised an incredibly dumb thought in my mind. Do Leon and Ashley qualify as incarnations of Link and Zelda? I filed that idea away for a while, and since I recently wanted to make a video, but not one that required too much effort, I decided to come back to it. Just to clarify a bit from the get-go, most Zelda games establish their own continuity in some way. The timeline is dumb, but the Link from Ocarina of Time is a different guy than Link from Wind Waker, who is a different guy than Link from Twilight Princess. Link from Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom are both just one guy as well. All Links have traits that make them a bit different, but they are still all incarnations of Link, and they share some traits in common. So there's no reason at its core that Leon can't be Link. Now first off, Link is usually a young, blonde-ish man wielding a blade, tasked with fighting off evil and protecting the Princess Zelda. Leon is not named Link, but he does have a 4-letter name that starts with L, which is close, and he's blonde-ish. And in most Zelda games, you can name Link anything you want anyways. For example, when I was a kid, I got Ocarina of Time secondhand, and there was a file on it already named Martin that I never erased because it had beaten the game already and made the things easy to explore. So Link can have any name. Martin, if you're out there, thank you. Now, Leon is a rookie cop in RE2, which is a good starting point if we want to compare him to other Links. Link usually tends to start out as a humble village kid in most games, who takes to sword fighting very quickly. It's not always clear if he was ever training to be a fighter in some entries, but the point is that he's a novice who picks up new weapons and handles stressful situations well. Link in Skyward Sword is actually training to be a warrior, which gives nice precedent to Leon's police training. Much like how Link adapts to new items and weapons fast, Leon also adapts to weapons he almost certainly was never trained to use as well. Among other things, he finds a flamethrower, grenades, and even a rocket launcher during his adventure in Raccoon City, and only the first of those things is something he would ever be trained to use as an American police officer. He also puts down numerous monsters and even helps rescue Sherry, a young blonde girl, as a nice practice round to rescuing Ashley. We don't know much about Leon's past beyond this, but that's normal for Link. Usually his family and home life are given pretty minimal detail, so I think the events of RE2 give Leon solid grounding to be a Link. Resident Evil 4, however, is where he really shines. Link's big thing is that he uses a blade, a sword, and in early RE2, Leon is given a knife by Marvin, a dying police officer he meets in the Raccoon City Police Department. RE4 seems to indicate that he kept this knife well after Raccoon City, and he's basically been using it since. This perfectly mirrors the way Link is first given his sword in A Link to the Past, where his dying uncle passes the weapon on to him after he fails to rescue the princess himself. In RE4, Leon shows excellent skill with the blade, and even prefers using a knife in close quarters, as he tells Ada. The remake also establishes that he was given intensive training by Krauser, who's later a boss fight that also makes heavy use of a knife. The remake, I think, lends a lot of credence towards Leon's status as a Link, because Leon can do some wild shit with a knife in that game. In the original, you could smack away certain projectiles with melee attacks, but the remake lets Leon deflect nearly anything with a knife, from fucking chainsaws all the way to fucking tentacles. Certain cutscenes also imply Leon is ambidextrous, much like Link is, using his knife in both hands, and RE6 even canonizes this with the ability to have Leon shift his dominant hand at will. This is arguably just an accessibility feature, but I'm treating it as canon because it supports my points. Moreover, Leon's knife breaks all the time, just like Link's weapons in Breath of the Wild. Leon also displays the virtue of courage over and over again. Resident Evil 2 is a situation that Leon wasn't ready for, and yet he stays strong and keeps his head above water no matter how stressful the crisis becomes. He goes above and beyond his duty and dives ever deeper into the heart of the Raccoon City crisis and puts himself in danger for the sake of discovering more and holding those responsible to account. He is a heroic character who has a strong sense of right and wrong despite being a cop. Resident Evil 4 sees him encounter even worse threats, many of which deliberately mirror the nightmares he encountered in Raccoon City, and this time he chooses to keep delving deeper and deeper without any backup so that he can rescue Ashley and set right what he felt was his failure at Raccoon City to save victims. He lives through hell twice for the good of people other than himself, and so he is a thoroughly unselfish person. Link is a similarly humble figure who always puts the well-being of others before himself, never letting danger or fear dictate his choices when others' lives are on the line. Now for Ashley. Is she a Zelda? Zelda is similarly reincarnated, and her forms aren't all the same either. Some, like Tetra and Wind Waker, aren't even really called Zelda for the most part. They just have to be a young woman in a royal line, and even that's negotiable. Zelda in Skyward Sword isn't a princess at all, actually. She's just the daughter of a headmaster at an academy. Zelda is also usually blonde, but that's not necessarily required either. So to start off with, Ashley is a blonde white girl, which is a good start. Moreover, her father is the president of the United States, which is pretty close to being a king in our world. And Zelda isn't always a royal as we established earlier anyways. She just has to be a daughter of someone important and powerful. Being the president's daughter, I think 100% fills out the criteria laid out by past entries in the Zelda franchise to be a Zelda. So this brings up the next question. Is she wise? While Link is defined by courage, Zelda is defined by wisdom. Ashley in the original RE4 is not a very fleshed out character at all. She sometimes helps provide hints or aids Leon in solving puzzles, but she's never really front and center and does some dumb shit that gets her caught also a few times. The remake gives her a much better defined character though, and I think Ashley in that game is pretty wise at certain points. Despite being in a horrific situation, Ashley keeps a much clearer head than any normal person would. She knows to follow Leon's orders and to stay close to him, trusting his expertise, but she also has a clutch moment or two where she legitimately helps him out, like in the cabin sequence where she secures Leon and Luis an exit as she realizes the situation is too extreme even for them. As the game goes on, she becomes a bit more of an equal partner to Leon, and even catches on to things he didn't, making good use of the merchant's lanterns, for example, and flames to survive without Leon's help. She can also even kill a regenerator in a sequence that actually caught me by surprise when I first played the game. Moreover, in both the original and remake, she can operate heavy construction equipment very expertly, even in a high-stress situation. I think you have to be quite wise to be forklift certified, and Ashley could definitely operate a forklift. So while RE4 isn't her finest hour, I think Ashley displays heroic traits in her own right and has a good head on her shoulders. Add in a politically powerful parent and a position of economic privilege, and you have a Zelda. Now, this does beg the question, who is their Ganon? The obvious answer is Saddler, the main villain of RE4, who kidnapped Ashley for a nefarious scheme to take over the world and give everyone brainworms. But that isn't quite the case. Saddler is an evil wizard of great power who transforms into a horrible eyeball creature at the end of the game, which actually gives him more in common with Vati, a lesser-known villain who appears in a few spin-off games. Wesker is the proper Ganondorf of the Resident Evil franchise, which then begs the question of who Chris and Sheva are, for which I have no answer.